Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Lesnick with Live Free Legal. I am a domestic violence attorney and also a survivor. And I help women navigate divorce, custody, and financial abuse so they can protect themselves and their children. If you are trying to figure out what your financial future looks like after divorce, this video is for you. Before we jump in, if this content is helpful, please make sure to like us, subscribe. I share weekly legal strategy, courtroom insight, and faith based encouragement for women navigating high conflict divorce. And if you stay with me until the end, I'm going to show you where you can access financial affidavit templates, budget worksheets, and tools that will help you start calculating your own case. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, please consult an attorney in your specific state. Last week, we talked about why alimony is so unpredictable. We talked about judicial discretion. We talked about alimony factors. We talked about marital misconduct. But today, I want to answer the question every woman is really asking. How does the judge actually come up with an alimony number? So here's the truth. Judges are not randomly picking numbers. Generally speaking, they are usually doing a three-step financial analysis. They are going to be looking at income, reasonable expenses, and surplus versus deficit. And this is in states that don't have a calculator or a guideline. There are a few states that do have a calculator or guidelines that they're plugging information into, but the majority of this, they're going to be using this three-step financial analysis, and I'm going to teach you how to use it too. Once you understand this, you can try to figure out what a reasonable amount of alimony is that you can ask for, and everything changes. So first, the courts are going to look at what is each party actually earning, right? We're going to be looking at income. Here's where women get tripped. It's not always just what's on the paycheck. Courts may consider base salary, bonuses, commissions, side income, cash, self-employment income, benefits, pensions, retirement, military benefits. So here's a pro tip for you. If you are using W-2 income, which is the majority of cases, you want to look at box 3 or box 5, his Social Security or his Medicare wages. That is going to reflect income before many deductions rather than the box 1 income. So ask the court to consider his gross income using his Social Security or his Medicare wages. Now, I want to talk about something that can completely shift an alimony case, because many men come into court saying he quit his job, he suddenly is making less money, or he says he can't afford support. So let's talk about imputation of income. Do the courts have to accept his excuses that he can't afford more, that he's suddenly making less, that he lost his job? And the answer is no, not necessarily. So what is imputation of income? Imputation of income is when the court assigns an income amount to a person, regardless of whether or not they're actually earning it. It's based on what they could be earning instead of what they are actually earning. So in simple terms, if someone is voluntarily unemployed, intentionally underemployed, hiding income, manipulating their earnings, the court can say, we don't believe this is your true earning ability, and they're going to impute income to that person. So when do the court impute? Courts are usually looking for bad faith or intentional reduction of income. Here's some common examples. Quitting a high-paying job right before separation or right before a court-ordered support obligation, switching to a lower-paying job without justification, or maybe switching from a full-time job to working part-time hours, refusing to work despite being capable of working, running income through a business to make it look like you have less income, working under the table, maybe just switching jobs, switching to a different profession when you have a court-ordered obligation. That's also a possibility. Maybe committing a crime or doing drugs, being addicted and being willfully terminated for his own behavior, something he's done. Embezzlement, stealing from an employer. sexual harassment, doing something at his job that causes him to lose his job involuntarily, discharged for cause, right? These are all things that the court can look at and say that he's acted in bad faith. Now, there's an important distinction. Not every job loss leads to imputation. If someone was laid off, has a legitimate medical need, is disabled, they're retired, they're caring for a young child, maybe they're caring for a disabled child or a really sick child, or is in a genuine career transition, the court may not impute income. Or maybe they're really struggling with severe mental health issues, or they have some severe substance abuse issues. The court may sympathize with. So, how do courts determine imputed income? If a court decides to impute income, they may look at prior earnings history, education and job skills, work experience, job opportunities in their particular area, industry standards, and lifestyle and spending patterns. What I will usually do is I go in and I take the last 3 years of income and then I average it and then I divide it by 12. So I get what the average monthly income that he's been earning for the last 3 years might look like. And I will usually ask the court to impute that amount of income to him. If he's generally been working and earning about the same amount of income each year, his income continuously goes up. And then he either lost his job for cause or he quit his job voluntarily. There's some reason he's just not working anymore. I'll usually ask the court to impute income to him at his last highest paying job. That's the job he last had that he was making the most amount of money. So I'll ask the court to impute that amount of income to him. If you have a spouse who hasn't had a lot of earnings, who doesn't have a lot of education, who doesn't have a lot of skills, or who hasn't worked in a very, very long time, at a minimum, you can ask the court to impute minimum wage income to him in your state at full-time hours. Okay. So, what the court is going to be asking when looking to impute income is what should this person be earning if they were acting in? What are they capable of doing? And why this matters for alimony, this is huge because imputed income directly impacts his ability to pay in the amount he has to pay you. For example, if he claimed, I only make $2,000 a month now, but historically he earned $8,000 a month, the court may base alimony on $8,000 a month, not $2,000 a month. And that can dramatically increase the amount of support that you will receive and the likelihood of receiving support. So if you suspect your spouse is hiding income, manipulating employment, or suddenly earning less, you need to be gathering prior income tax returns, W-2s and pay stubs, employment history, bank statements, LinkedIn profiles, evidence of lifestyle like travel, spending, etc. on social media pages. I also like to look at credit card statements and bank statements. What I'll do is I'll show the court, look at the inflow of income that he has every month for at least a year, and then look at his spending, right? He's coming in here claiming that he's poor, but his bank statements or his credit card statements actually reflect that he has a good source of income that's actually coming in and he's still spending excessively, even though he claimed that he's really, really poor. You want to gather up all of this evidence and this data. You want to have paper copies of this evidence because, again, courts cannot consider what is not presented. You have to have this information to present to the court. So, for the women watching this video who feels like the system is being manipulated, remember this. Luke 8:17 says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed." So even when it feels like the truth is buried, it has a way of coming to light, right? And the light always outshines the darkness. So now, once the court determines income, whether actual or imputed, the next step becomes your budget. So, step 2 is your budget, including income taxes. And this is critical. This is where your financial affidavit becomes one of the most important documents in your entire case because the court is asking, what does it actually cost for you to live each month? But there is one expense that is often overlooked and it can significantly impact your case, and that is taxes. Many women come into this process thinking in terms of gross income before taxes, but your actual life is based on net income, which is after taxes. Because if you don't account for taxes properly, your budget may be inaccurate, your need may be unestimated, or your expectations may be unrealistic. What courts are really looking at and what they're trying to understand is what is each party's real usable income. You don't pay rent with gross income and you don't buy groceries with gross income. You live on what's left over after taxes. So, how do you account for taxes in your budget? When you are preparing your financial affidavit, you should be thinking about federal income taxes, state income taxes, if they're applicable, Social Security and Medicare taxes, health insurance deductions, and retirement contributions, which are sometimes considered. So there's two main approaches. You can use your actual paycheck, which is the easiest way to calculate income taxes. Look at your net take home pay. This is the simplest and often most accurate method. You can subtract your net take home from your gross income to determine how much you're actually paying in taxes. Or option two, you can estimate taxes from gross income. If you only have gross income, if you are using gross income in your case, you must account for taxes somewhere because otherwise it can look like there is more available income than there actually is. And this directly impacts ability to pay, your surplus or deficit, and then final alimony numbers. And this is one of the first things judges are going to do. They're going to look at your gross income, they're going to look at his gross income, and then they're going to immediately subtract income taxes. And then they're going to get net. What is available to him to pay you, and what is available for you to live off of to establish what your need is. The court is always comparing income versus expenses. And if your taxes are not properly accounted for, his income may look artificially high and your need may look artificially low. And that can completely distort the outcome. So the court is evaluating what your expenses are as well. And when we talk about expenses, we're talking about reasonable monthly expenses for both him and for you. And many times they're going to be looking at your financial affidavit to determine what those expenses are. So when you are preparing your financial affidavit, do not guess, do not inflate, and do not ignore income taxes. Use real numbers where possible, use calculators when needed, and be consistent and document everything. Because again, your financial affidavit is not just a form, it is your financial story. Now, once the court understands income, whether that's actual or imputed, and your reasonable expenses, including taxes, the next step is the most important one. It's going to be your surplus versus your deficit. This is where your financial affidavit becomes everything. The court is asking, what does it actually cost for you to live? But not just any number, a reasonable monthly budget. Judges are looking at housing, utilities, food, transportation, child related expenses, medical cost. But here's the key courts are filtering through your budget through a lens of, is this reasonable? Are these expenses reasonable? Courts often reject excessive shopping, inflated or unsupported expenses. So I'll give you an example. If you're contributing $1,000 or $1,500 to your retirement account every month, that may be an expense that they strike or not consider reasonable. So what strengthens your case? Bank statements, credit card statements, historical spending, consistency. You want to be able to prove what your actual expenses are, what your expenses were during the course of the marriage to show what your standard of living was during the marriage and that you're not exceeding what the standard of living was during the marriage. So now we get to the heart of it. The court compares your income versus your reasonable expenses and his income versus his reasonable expenses. So we're looking at your budget. When you go through all of your expenses, your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, your car payment, your insurance, your gas, your food, your household maintenance, your car maintenance, expenses for pets, unreimbursed medical expenses, co-pays, memberships. We add all of those up. So we have our income, we have our taxes that we subtract out, then we have our reasonable expenses. Again, they have to be reasonable. And then again, the court subtracts out those reasonable expenses. What does he have left over? What do you have left over? Do you have a deficit? If you have a deficit, meaning you're in the red, you can't meet your need. Does he have a surplus? Meaning, does he have more money left over at the end of the month? If he has money available, then he may be able to provide support. Your deficit plus his ability to pay equals potential alimony. So, for example, if you earn $2,000 a month, your expenses are $5,000 a month, you have a deficit of $3,000 a month. He earns $8,000 a month. His expenses are $5,000 a month. His surplus is $3,000 a month. And that's where the negotiation or ruling lives. So now reality check. Here's the part no one tells women. Even if you need $3,000, if he only has $1,000 available, you may even only get $500 because the court's going to leave him with something to live off of. So courts must balance your need plus his ability to pay. And this is why most awards fall in the low to mid range, not the high end. Okay, so there's one more thing we have to keep into consideration. If you have children, child support is also part of the alimony calculation. This is critical and often misunderstood. Child support is usually calculated first, then alimony is layered on top of what's left. And so if child support already consumes most of his income, this directly limits alimony. We take his income, your income, minus the taxes, minus the reasonable monthly expenses. Then the court will subtract the amount of child support he's paying you and then look at the bottom line. What does he have left over? Does he have a surplus? Does he have a deficit? They're going to add child support to what you potentially have left over. Now, with that child support, does that give you a surplus or a deficit? So that can affect alimony. And what they're looking at is what do the two of you have left over when we calculate all of those things? And if he has a lot left over and you don't have anything, they're going to do what they can to try to equalize the playing field between you both. And that's how generally the courts are going to be calculating alimony. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Alimony is not just about numbers. It's about your total presentation. The strongest cases tell a clear financial story. They show a lifestyle during the marriage. They demonstrate sacrifice and they prove need with evidence. The weak cases guess, they overinflate, they lack documentation, or they're not consistent. They also don't know their numbers. Judges cannot award what is not proven. So again, I want to speak to the woman who feels guilty for asking for support, afraid of the outcome, or overwhelmed by the numbers. Psalm 37, 23 through 24 says, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him." You are not wrong for seeking stability. You are not selfish for asking for support. You are rebuilding after imbalance, and God is with you in that process. So stay strong. If you are calculating your numbers, I have tools inside my Empower Her membership that walk you through this step-by-step. Financial affidavit templates, budget worksheets, alimony strategy guides. You can access those at www.com. The link is in the description below. In next week's video, I'm going to walk you through how to negotiate alimony so you don't leave money on the table, because what happens outside the courtroom is often just as important as what happens inside. If this helped you, make sure to like us, subscribe, and share this video with another woman who needs to hear it.